to dominate prospecting. Okay, so I want to tell you a little bit of backstory on where these three keys come from. When I first got involved in real estate, I put a bunch of money into a brokerage. I decided to partner with a rockstar broker and rockstar agent, and basically it was my responsibility to generate leads, prospect, manage, and basically make sure the team was running with efficiency. And in between, me going out on appointments and also basically feeding the calendars of of my two partners. And so I was pretty confident in my abilities to be able to do that because I had a strong background when it came to inside sales. I had helped develop, train and coach and been a top producer in inside sales my whole life and developed some really awesome companies in sales organizations. So I went in and I was all confident, and most of my experience was B2B. And it was really quite interesting because when I made my first set of prospecting calls, B2C, some through my database and some actually calling for sale by owners and expireds, that was kind of what we went after, along with some internet leads. I was in kind of for a rude awakening because the psychology of dealing with a for sale by owner and expired is very different than I ever experienced before. And I think for anyone that's consistently prospect understands the dynamic and the difference of when you're talking to a for sale by owner and expired, you're marketing to a for sale by owner expired, or an internet lead, or a geographical lead, or whatever niche you're going after. There's a little bit of a different psychology. There are similarities, but there's some big differences. And so what ends up happening sometimes when we don't have there's three big things in place, sometimes we can give up. And that's almost kind of what started happening to me. And until I came across three simple things that kept me focused, and I want to share those things with you. And that once I implemented these three things, it helped take me to the next level with my prospecting. We went from hovering around 30 to 40 transactions to doing 150 transactions our first year together between the three of us. And then what ended up happening, we got so good at prospecting and so good with for sale by owners and expireds, we ended up developing a whole inside sales team and developing a broker-to-broker referral program, and we skyrocketed. And it all started because of these three simple principles that I'm going to share with you. They're very simple, very powerful, but really it comes down to a mental game. So don't let the simplicity of them fool you. It's not always easy, but it's very simple, okay? So the first key that I learned the hard way is that I can't just expect to pick up the phone day one, or you can't, and make 40 phone calls and then be a rock star converter, right? And I think that's what happens to us is that we forget that it takes time to develop new skills. And we've probably all heard the training when it comes to the different skill levels where you have incompetent competence, or unconscious incompetence, and then you go from that to conscious incompetence, and then you go from there to conscious competence. But the real goal is to get to unconscious competence. It's a natural learning curve. And then there's the 5,000 hour principle, where if you're going to master anything, you got to do something consistently for about 5,000 hours. I found that principle to be false. That you can shorten. There are ways to shorten your skills or develop skills quicker. But for the average person, that's kind of what it takes. But there's certain techniques and strategies I'll teach you in a different video you can do to tighten up that learning curve. Now, with that said, what happens is because we never develop the skills because we never practice enough to get to that unconscious competence level, right? And it would kind of be like the analogy that I like to give when I do this training to inside sales agents or to new agents is this. I say, I talk about, use a karate analogy or taekwondo. You can't come out and expect to be a black belt by making 150 phone calls, right? There's a step-by-step process that you have to go through. I teach 7 steps. It's a 7-step system to mastering prospecting and lead conversion. What I mean by that is prospecting, set up the appointment, and then closing, presenting and closing skills to close more deals, right? There's a 7-step process that I teach. But within that framework, you got to develop and take the time to develop the sales skills. So that's number one. That's the number one lesson is I needed to take the time to learn the skills. I needed to be patient with myself, not beat myself up, find ways to keep myself in a positive mindset. One of the ways I used to motivate myself to push myself forward is understanding the power of my numbers. I would go through my numbers and I would use, where is it? If I can find it. I would use a sales journal to start tracking my results, okay, to help me improve my skills. And and what I would do is I would do projections on my income. And then I started thinking about what I want to do with my income and how that would help. And it helped me push through the initial mental hurdle of not feeling like I was competent enough to win, right? And getting over that rejection. So that's number one. Number two is frequency. And this kind of goes with number one. But if you can't expect to be successful with your sales and marketing plan if you're inconsistent, you don't have frequency, right? So the first question that I ask my clients when they're coming to me and they're saying, hey, Isaiah, where are my opportunities of growth in my business? I ask themselves, first question, do you have a sales and marketing plan? And depending on what they say, my next question is, how often are you consistently doing the sales and marketing activities that you need to do to be successful with the plan? Because as much as we get caught up in technology, we get caught up in the awesome widgets, which, by the way, I have some kick butt technology through Ren and other service providers. It's important. Frequency and consistency is so important. You can actually just have mediocre content, average content, and be an average prospector, but be consistent and most likely beat somebody that might have a little bit more skill or might have a little bit more of marketing experience because you're just more consistent. And then what happens is you're more consistent, you can blow your competition away because you start developing better skills, right? And then within that, within frequency is making sure that you have a system. So one of the things I trained on yesterday was a scorecard, and I'm going to make that scorecard public and available to everybody. But that scorecard breaks down every time you make a prospecting call. There's 7 different components, and here they are. Ready? Building rapport and qualifying, building value, creating urgency and desire, trial closing, overcoming the objections, your follow-up, and then tracking your metrics. Those are the 7 key components to having an effective prospecting system. So what I've done early on is I developed a scorecard that I would score myself on each of those areas, each of those tactics within my prospecting strategy on how successful I was at each one. And I would be a nutcase about it. I would do it on every single call. And so what ended up happening is I get better and better and better every single call until it was to the point where I could almost predict my income. It was almost became kind of fun because I knew exactly what they were going to say next. I knew exactly how to respond. And I got so good at it, then I got really good at teaching it. And it changed everything. It changed my income. It changed my lifestyle. It changed our business growth, our trajectory, everything changed. And the final pillar, just to leave you off with the final pillar, is the number of contacts you're committing to. I've heard a bunch of different numbers in the industry. We all know about the perfect day in real estate document, right? Here's the different perfect day, and there's different numbers. Here's the thing. Here's my opinion on it. My recommendation is a minimum of 40 to 50 contacts a day, where you're having 10 to 20 conversations. You're trying to get 10 conversations in a day. If you're having 10 good conversations a day, it takes about 40 dials to get 10 conversations usually, unless the data's crap, right? Or maybe you're calling a geographical list. It's a little bit of a tougher list. But on the average list, that's what the numbers take. And imagine if you can discipline yourself to have 7 to 10 conversations a day. And especially for those of you that have 10,000 people sitting in your database, right? Or some of you have 500. What are we doing with those leads? Why are we not calling them, right? And why are we not reaching out to them? Now, I don't necessarily mean you have to cold call them, but if you're using our technology, like if you're a client of mine, You should be getting email. You're sending emails out, you're sending texts, you're sending direct voicemails, you're launching Facebook ads. You got this whole multi-channel marketing process working if you're a client. And then it's just filling in the gaps from there and seeing who's interacting with your content and reaching out to them, right? Or having somebody on your team reach out to them. If you're a team leader and you're crazy busy and maybe you're not in production anymore, having somebody reach out to them, filling that gap, right? And that number of contacts is huge. So that's kind of our minimum amount, is to have 10 conversations on a day on the account. If you can't commit to that, whatever the frequency you can, or the number of contacts you're willing to commit is, commit to that number and don't compromise it. Okay, one of my clients that uses our technology, but also has become a coaching client, he and I talk about this all the time. You can tell when he's going to have what his month is going to look like next month based on his activities this month. And I want you to remember this, okay? Whatever is happening right now is going to be a reflection, most likely, what your results are going to be 5 weeks from now, right? So 3 to 5 weeks from now, whatever you're doing right now is probably going to determine what your results are going to be like 3 to 5 weeks from now. And so if you're inconsistent and you're changed the number of contacts, what's going to happen to your income? It's also going to be inconsistent, and it's going to get frustrating. Then we get stressed, and then the home life, gets hard and all this other stuff, right? Or if you're paying for a ton of leads on a team, right? And they're not being called properly on time, it creates stress, right? All these things create stress. So in summary, 3 things: skill level, frequency, number of contacts. Well, Isaiah, I don't know where to go. I am in a coaching program, but they're not talking about training me on how to become a better prospector. What do I do? If you're a current client, you can join, or you should already be in the Ren Success community. We role play live every morning. Okay, we prospect live every afternoon, and then we have a sales and marketing implementation structure in our community, where you can implement a sales and marketing process live with other like-minded agents. So we provide that support network. If you're part of our brokerage, if you are part of the Realty Home Advisors, my brokerage, you have that support network. You have that available to you, right? So tap into those things. Create accountability. Create an environment. It's all about environment. If you think about it, and I'll end with this, your environment most likely is going to be a direct reflection of your success. I'll leave you with that. Isaiah Colton here. I appreciate you guys listening and tuning in. Remember the big 3. Go out and crush it, and you'll double and triple your income if you stay consistent. Have a great day.